out the back end of that airplane, how long would it take to reach $1 trillion? And you were very surprised by that.
I was very surprised by the answer. Give us the answer there.
14 years.
Wow. And now our government has moved from talking about billions to trillions just like it's nothing. Just like our deficit this year, our yearly deficit, not the national debt, but the yearly deficit, 1.2 trillion, and Obama's going to take it to 2 trillion. And I heard an interview with Paul Craig Robertson. He said that in the 80s, when the economy was booming, if he had been told they had a $2 trillion yearly deficit, he said they would just be appalled. They'd be astonished, and they would be scared to death. But here we're facing it, and everyone just carries on.
Depression ahead. Prepare for stock rout. This is Société Générale, which is one of the main European financial services companies based in Paris, France. They said Thursday that the United States economy looks likely to enter a depression and China's economy could implode.
Unbelievable. You know, you were talking about the unemployment rate, and I've seen different numbers, but there's a lot of people that agree that the government's unemployment numbers doesn't contain the ones that's given up on a job or the ones.
Absolutely. What they do contain is initial claims, and those the people that are on the list of, quote, unemployed remain there for approximately 6 months. After that, if you haven't found a job, you come off of that list.
So the unemployment rate that the government's telling us now, I think, is somewhere around 7.5.
7.2, I believe.
Something like that. It's probably conceivable that it's double that.
Oh, absolutely. I would certainly bet the farm on that. Same as inflation, and practically any figure they give out, you really can't trust.
Yeah, and in this neighborhood, as everyone listening knows, here in Iredell County, Davie County, just in the last couple of months, I mean, I'm seeing people losing their jobs like I've never seen in my lifetime before.
Absolutely, and like one guy I work with owns a farm. He's having all kinds of people just stop by randomly. Hey, do you need help? I'm unemployed.
Yes.
And of course, farming isn't exactly an easy job, so.
No, and the government's helped put the farmer down to being a pauper, unfortunately, with things that they've passed reducing the farmer, which we're going to seriously regret at some point in the future if we don't already. Let's go ahead and take a break now, and we'll come back. We've got a couple of email that we want to read early in our broadcast, so that if anyone wants to respond to it. We've got a couple more news items, and then later in the broadcast we will go to the phones. This is Farron and Brian on the Real News, WSIC 1400, WDSL 1520. Alright, we're back on the Real News. We're going to do a couple of email that was sent to us, and then a little bit more news, and we'll go to the phone calls. But our first email is from Jim, and his email says, as much as I feel that Obama is just another puppet for the world banks and for the global elite, at least Bush will finally be out of the White House. I wonder what George will do next. Maybe go on another vacation and laugh and have fun with all of his billionaire buddies, sit around a campfire with his cowboy hat on, sharing crime stories as they roast marshmallows, hot dogs, and copies of the U.S. Constitution. But anyway, we must move forward, and I only wonder what will be next. What fill-in-the-blank, heart-pounding tragedy awaits humanity? What could it be? Food shortages, maybe? The collapse of the dollar? Gun confiscation? Another false flag, perhaps? Well, only time will tell. But you can bet your falling dollar that all of us are in for challenging times, and it would be in the best interest of your listeners to become as self-reliant as possible. Also, stay close to your family, and most of all, stay close to God. Jim, and that's something you'd commented on this week as far as you'd sent email out to everyone in your family to prepare, to be self-reliant, stock up. And
absolutely. I mean, given all the writing on the wall, I mean, nothing in the future is ever for certain, but sometimes you can see what's going to happen, and this is definitely that time.
And shortly after I do the next news segment that I want to do on the Second Amendment, you can tell our listeners about your experience going down to, which gun shop was you at?
It was the Isle Pawn Shop in Mooresville.
All right, we'll get to that in a second. Got one other email, and believe it or not, I know this might come as a shock to some of you. Not all the email that I receive is complimentary, but this is a forum for the listeners, so I want to give everybody a chance to be heard. Farron, I listen to your show, although I'm not sure why. Has anyone told you people listen to talk radio because they want to hear the Democrats being bashed? You criticize both parties so much I never know who you support. I will say you and the other guy have reported some interesting news and topics that you would never hear elsewhere, but there is one thing you do that infuriates me. I can't stand for you to start on the property tax issue. You're the first and only person I've ever heard say something as ridiculous as you never own your own property because you're never done paying taxes on it. This is your duty, and it is a shame to question it. I enjoy paying my property taxes. I consider it my civic duty, and I feel I am contributing to my community. What is even more astonishing is you have callers that seem to agree with you. Feel free to read this on the air, but I bet you won't because you're on the hot seat for your un-American, unpatriotic, and stupid ideals, Kevin. well, hang on.
You're on the air.
Let me correct you on one thing, Kevin. Being able to question the establishment or oppose your government is by definition true freedom. But thanks for your email, Kevin. Your opinion is welcome here, as is everyone's. I won't stoop to calling you names, but I think there's something I can do for you that will make your tax paying experience even more enjoyable. Before you go to the tax office, get you a white t-shirt and write in big black letters on the front and the back, slave, and wear that. While there, pay double whatever your taxes are, and by paying twice as much, you should feel twice as good. And before you leave to complete your experience, see if you can lick their boots before you go.
Where do I start? The other guy.
Any comments, Brian?
How about pay mine?
Why don't you just pull up the Bank of America and just give them your money directly? Just go in there with the wheelbarrow, say, here's my homage, Your Highness. Man.
We have to be able to question the establishment.
That's what patriotism is questioning the...
I feel like my property tax is oppressive. I know we have to have a tax system, we have to have cops, schools, I understand that. But when I have to sign forms and I'm criminally liable if I don't dot my T correctly or dot my I, cross my T correctly under their opinion, I have to stand in opposition to that. So, but it is a forum for the listener. You can call in, email, whatever you want to. We have got a clip that we're going to play, and Brian had mentioned this. We'd also had a caller that had mentioned it, Mr. Anderson, and I found this very interesting. A couple other people have mentioned it too. And Brian, if you want to lead us into it and tell us just a little bit of the correlation between the fall of the Roman Empire and what's happening in America right now.
Yes, the similarities between the two falls of two of the world's, quote, greatest empires, depending on your version of greatest, I suppose. I guess that just means the people who have killed the most people, the Roman Empire and, of course, the United States Empire. The similarities between the two empires and the obvious collapse. So we're going to go ahead and play that clip for you.
Glory in the 200 years after Christ. It grew until the empire united all lands from Spain to Syria and from Scotland to Egypt. More prosperity, more stability, and more peace than the Western world had ever seen. But there was nothing mystical about the chaos of the 3rd century. Quite simply, the empire had become unmanageable. Emperors could no longer cope with the monster Rome had become. Political power was concentrated in too few hands. Rome had turned its back on the common man. Destitute families flooded into the city, swelling the ranks of sweatshop workers and the urban poor.
The proletariat are idle, lazy, and devote their whole life to drink, gambling, brothels, shows, and chariot races. Their temple, their dwelling, their meeting place, in fact the center of all their desires, is the Circus Maximus. They talk about nothing else. Let me be honest.
distracting.